afternoon. Welcome to the National Press Club for our Speakers Luncheon. My name is Donna Leinwand. I'm president of the National Press Club and a reporter for USA Today. We're the world's leading professional organization for journalists, and we are committed to a future of journalism by providing informative programming and journalism education and fostering a free press worldwide. For more information about the National Press Club, please visit our website at www.press.org. On behalf of our 3,500 members worldwide, I'd like to welcome our speaker and our guests in the audience today. I'd also like to welcome those of you who are watching us on C-SPAN. We're looking forward to today's speech, and afterwards, I'll ask as many questions from the audience as time permits. Please hold your applause during the speech so that we have time for as many questions as possible. For those in our broadcast audience, I'd like to explain that if you hear applause, it may be from the guests and members of the general public who attend our luncheons and not necessarily from the working press. I'd now like to introduce our head table guests and ask them to stand briefly when their names are called. From your right, Sheila Cherry of BNA, a former president of the National Press Club. Todd Gilman of the Dallas Morning News. Holly Rosenkrantz, reporter for Bloomberg News. Liz Schuler, secretary-treasurer of the AFL-CIO and a guest of our speaker. Mark Sheff, Cranes Workforce Management. John Hyatt, chief of staff for the AFL-CIO and a guest of our speaker. Skipping over the podium. Angela Greiling-Keene, Bloomberg News and chair of the National Press Club's Speakers Committee. Skipping over our speaker for a moment, Robert Cardin of Cardin Communications and the Speakers Committee member who organized today's event. Thank you very much, Bob. Arlene Holt-Baker, Executive Vice President of the AFL-CIO and a guest of our speaker. Peter Van Fleet of AP Broadcast. Vanita Anand, Chief Research Analyst in the Office of Investment for the AFL-CIO. And finally, Rodrigo Valderrama, a freelance op-ed writer. "30 years ago, working in the coal mines of western Pennsylvania, our guest today probably didn't envision standing before the National Press Club as the newly elected president of the AFL-CIO. Richard Trumka went to work in the mines for the same reasons most miners do, because his father and his grandfather had worked there before him. But Trumka, along the way, worked through college and law school, joined the labor movement, and eventually led the United Mine Workers Union. As president of the UMWA, Trumka led the union in one of the most successful strikes in American history against the Pittston Coal Company, which had tried to avoid paying into an industry-wide health and pension fund. The strike resulted in significant advances in employer-employee cooperation and enhanced mine workers' job security, pensions, and benefits. Breaking with decades of tradition, his consistent use of nonviolent civil disobedience led to his receiving the Labor Responsibility Award from the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change in 1990. Trumka's accomplishments as president of the Mine Workers Union include passage of the Federal Coal Act that provides guaranteed health care for retired miners and bringing the union back into the AFL-CIO fold. He served as secretary-treasurer of the AFL-CIO for 14 years before being elected president in September. Last year, President Obama named Mr. Trumka to the Economic Recovery Advisory Board. In fact, he'll meet with the president later today. Please join me in welcoming to the National Press Club Mr. Richard Trumka.
First of all, let me thank you, Donna, for those very kind and generous words, and let you know that I'm delighted to be here at the National Press Club. I also want to thank the officers of the Press Club for the invitation to be here with you today, especially you and Bob Cardin, Speaker's chairman, committee member who actually arranged this thing. Thank you, Bob. 10 days into the decade and 1 year into the Obama administration, our nation remains poised between the failed policies of the past and the hopes for a better future. This is a moment that cries out for political courage, and we're not seeing enough of it. I spent the first week of this year traveling on the West Coast. In San Francisco, I was arrested with low-wage hotel workers fighting to protect their health care and their pensions from leveraged buyouts that had gone bad. In Los Angeles and San Diego, I talked with working Americans moved to tears by foreclosures and unemployment, by outsourcing and benefit cuts. Everywhere I went, people said to me, "Why do so many of the people we elect seem to care only about Wall Street? Why is helping bankers a matter of urgency, but unemployment is something we just have to live with? Why don't we make anything in America anymore? And why is it so hard to pass a health care bill that guarantees Americans healthy lives instead of guaranteeing insurance companies healthy profits?" As I traveled from city to city, I heard a sense of resignation from middle-class Americans. People laid off for the first time in their lives asking, "What did I do wrong?" I came away shaken by the sense that the very things that make America great are now in danger. What makes us unique among nations is this: in America, working people are the middle class. We built our middle class in the 20th century through hard work, through struggle, and visionary political leadership. But a generation of destructive, greed-driven economic policies has eroded that progress and now threatens our very identity as a nation. Today, on every coast and in between, working women and working men are fighting to join the middle class and to protect and to rebuild it. We crave political leadership ready to fight for the kind of America that we want to leave to our children and against the forces of greed that brought us to this very moment. But instead we hear a resurgence of complacency and political paralysis. Too many people in Washington seem to think that now that we've bailed out the banks, everything will be okay. In 2010, our elected leaders must choose between continuing the policies of the past or striking out on a new economic course for America, a course that'll reverse the damaging trend towards greater inequality that's crippling our nation. At this moment, the voices of America's working women and men truly must be heard in Washington. Not the voices of bankers and speculators for whom it always seems to be the best of times, but the voices of those for whom the new year brings pink slips and give-backs, hollowed-out health care, foreclosures and pension freezes. It's the roll call of an economy that long ago stopped working for most of us. Today I want to talk to you about the labor movement's vision for our nation. See, working people want in America an American economy that works for them, that creates good jobs, where wealth is shared fairly, and where the economic life of our nation is about solving problems like the threat of climate change rather than creating problems like the foreclosure crisis. We know that growing inequality undermines our ability to grow as a nation by squandering the talents and the contributions of our people and consigning entire communities to stagnation and to failure. If we're going to make our vision real, First, we must challenge our political leaders, and we must challenge ourselves, and we must challenge our movement. Workers formed the labor movement as an expression of our lives.